intent of this class, which is really kind of a similar intent of all these classes. I think generally, universally, we kind of all just want to feel better in our bodies throughout the day. And so that's what you could call the purpose or the intent of these classes. And that shift from love to lack, or from lack to love rather, is the shift of feeling better in our bodies. And we can approach this in so many different ways, and essentially every spiritual teaching is universal. They're all talking about the same thing. Whether it's a oneness perspective, a oneness spiritual teaching, where the focus is a kind of learning to accept the reality of what is, accept the reality of who we are and who others are. And in that acceptance is the experience and the recognition of how we're actually all working together. And you can talk from that perspective. And that teaching is just another perspective. And that teaching is words that point to the universal spiritual truth. And that universal spiritual truth is in many different forms. The words of them is in many different forms. It could be oneness. It could be present moment. This is another common package that the words are wrapped in that point to the spiritual truth. Present moment, the importance of this. Actually being with what is really happening. Even being aware of what is actually going on. Whether it's a feeling in the body, whether it's the body itself, thoughts that are happening in the mind when they happen, people that are present, objects that are present, so we're not tripping over the furniture. And in that alignment is once again, the alignment of the present moment is once again that universal spiritual teaching. Or it may be wrapped in the form of mindfulness. That's another package or words that's often used to point to one spiritual truth. And they all have similarities. They're all a different perspective, trying to point in the right direction. They're all words or perspectives or teachings are all symbols pointing towards the truth. And mindfulness words it differently. It words it seeing things as they are. This is the essence of vipassana. Being with what is actually occurring. And this is that alignment once again. And this is also recognizing that we're not separate from others. There's oneness. So every different kind of approach that's taken in any spiritual teaching is all really pointing to the same one truth. It's just that one truth you can't really say with words because it depends on which perspective you're coming in at it. So, tonight, in this series, the angle that we're coming in at it is going to be love versus lack. So right away, we need to understand why these words were even chosen. It could have been a million other words. But they were chosen very deliberately because I think they're the most universal in describing what often gets in the way to that spiritual truth that we're looking for. Or rather, the experience of what the words point towards. So love, I think, is most closely, in the way we're using the word love tonight, most closely associated with inclusion. So we could consider love, in the way we're using it tonight, as synonymous with inclusion. And then lack, conversely, will be synonymous with exclusion. So this is in the way we're describing it tonight, this is the mentality that we often battle with. And this is, when understanding this perspective, this battle, then it points us to that spiritual truth, that spiritual experience. So the inclusion is a mentality of more accepting what is present and bringing it in, considering it. As you can imagine, the experience of accepting another person, or another person accepting you, or you even accepting yourself, feels good. And it can be the experience of love. Furthermore, the experience of other qualities that embodies love is listening. It can feel like love. It can be the experience of love. These are the higher consciousness qualities that we're talking about here. When someone listens to you, or when you listen to someone, they can have the experience of love. Or when you actually listen or receive yourself, that can feel better. You feel better in your body. So we're kind of lumping all these qualities into love. Furthermore, actually understanding, taking the time, whoever's present in your environment, to understand them. They're there for a reason. Or them understanding you, or you understanding yourself. This can be an experience of love. Trust is a similar way. Trusting someone else, they can experience love, and you can experience love by trusting someone else, and you certainly can experience love when someone trusts you, or when you trust yourself. And even mindfulness could be lumped under this category of love. Because even the very essence of mindfulness is being with someone. Attention on what is present. Attention on receiving what they're saying. Attention on what they might be feeling. Conversely, someone being mindful, that to you, that is very much an experience of love. And being mindful to yourself. So you can start to see the expanded definition that we have of love here, and why we chose the word love in the title. Love versus lack. I wanted to choose a title that would be super easy to remember. So that way you can very easily, like in any moment, is this love or is this lack? And when we clearly see the definitions and then the different way to work with it, the value of one over the other, then I think the momentum of the old energy will be much easier to step out of and into the new energy, which is the love consciousness versus lack. Now let's define lack. This is an interesting one. Lack is defined in the way we're using it tonight with this perspective. As seeking one thing. Holding one thing in your mind. And that one thing can be broken down into two categories. It could be something that you want, that you're recognizing isn't here, or it could be something that you don't want. That when you recognize what is here, you're seeing that it's not there, it's lacking. So let's think about those for a minute. If we examine what is currently present and we find what we don't want, we have the experience of lack. Just by identifying what we don't want, we are having the experience of lack. This is less than, I see what's here and it's not what I want. In fact, I don't like it. That's the experience of less than. Or conversely, if you're holding in mind what you do want, and you see that this environment does not have that, then once again, you're seeing how this environment is lacking. It doesn't have the one thing I want. So you can see how holding one thing in your mind, whether that's something you want or something you don't like, you don't want, is the experience of lack consciousness, is the experience of lack. So it's holding that sense of lack, how this could be better everywhere you go. This is a pretty normal way to move about the world. It's like always looking for what's wrong to make it better. It seems like that would make a lot of sense. It seems like that's the way you do things. And it has served us well for a long time. And if we're in this class, we've experienced what the feeling of that way of moving produces in our body for a long time. And we're wondering if we can evolve from this. So that's the perspective that I'm here to share tonight. It's the leap or the movement from looking for what is lacking to what is love. And so what would this movement look like? What would this shift look like? We know pretty darn well what the movement of what is the one thing that is missing here? What is the one thing I want more than anything? And holding that in mind, we know what that feels like in the body. Whether we hold that one thing in mind all day, whether conscious or unconscious of it, or whether we're doing it with little things throughout the day. And that's just within our normal activity. If we're doing it within our normal activity of the world, that means we're also doing it to ourselves. And so we're not able to abide in our body very easily because we see how it's lacking. And so we're constantly having the experience of lack. We're moving the experience of lack consciousness with us everywhere we go. And we know what that feels like in the body. So the shift to love consciousness is a little bit different. It is, instead of seeking for what isn't here that we might want, or what is here that we don't want, instead, we are looking for how to use what is present. This is abundance consciousness. And giving the conditions at hand, how can I use what is here? Whether these may be physical resources, or maybe these may be people. It's easy to get in the consciousness and the mindset of the other things that are important that I need to be doing. and not even seeing the people here, not even seeing the resources at hand. And so they would experience that as them being lack. Certainly, they wouldn't experience it as love. And if they don't experience it as love, then you wouldn't experience it as love. So, how can we use what is present? This is the shift. How can we use what is present? So it's looking around, assessing what the resources are, who the people are that are here, and how can we produce, what can we produce within the context of what is here? What can we produce? What can we create? This is abundance consciousness. Seeing everything as a resource. And then the next step, when we begin to practice looking around, which already is a mindfulness activity. Already we got all the spiritual teachings into this. Looking around, mindfully, actually seeing what's really going on, what's really here. The lack, though, the old lack consciousness, it comes in and it says, and rather than it says, it just naturally doesn't trust that what is here is enough. It naturally doesn't trust that the universe gives us everything that we need in each moment. And so in this practice of looking around to see what we can use that is present, and the lack consciousness will come in and say, no, this still isn't enough. This still isn't what I want. And so it takes some practice. A practice and feeling the difference. Feeling is like, do I want to continue this lack consciousness, taking this with me in every present moment that I'm in? Or do I want to bring a love consciousness, take it with me into every moment that I am in? Which would be something different than being the one who identifies what this moment needs or what it's lacking or what it would prefer. And so that shift, that difference, is beginning to trust that the universe is constantly providing what is needed for this moment, constantly providing what is needed. And so it's a different mindset. It's looking, okay, if it's constantly provided, then let's see, there's this part, and there's this thing and this thing. How can they go together? How can I make something greater than what these parts are separately? In each moment, this is abundance. This is not a lack consciousness that we're describing here. This is an abundance consciousness. And it really is the only thing that actually makes sense. If you think about it, imagining something far out that's not even related to the reality of what's happening here is like trying to fit a square inside of a circle. It just doesn't fit. So when you take these things apart like this and look at them really practically, it's actually the only thing that makes sense to do. This is how we prosper. And the feeling of prosperous is love. So the question is, what is the universe asking of me presently? Because you're a part of all the other parts, not any different. What is the universe asking of me? how can I put all these parts together, including myself, whether it be engaging with people or working with things, in order to create the most out of what is present. Working with reality as it is, instead of bringing lack consciousness of imagined square that isn't here, circle. Why are we imagining? Let's just work with what's here. So this is love versus lack. This is another twist on every spiritual teaching. We've all been raised in different ways. We've all had different experiences, interpreted things a million different ways. And so it takes not only a million different teachings for a million different people, but it also takes many different teachings for the same individual at different times and to hit different points within our thinking. So this is why there's so many different perspectives out there. And they're so helpful, they're so valuable. So this is what we have for our first class of love versus lack. Keeping in mind when our mind has the momentum of the one thing. And that one thing, what this moment doesn't have, that I don't. I want something that this moment doesn't have, or I don't want something that this moment has. That's the experience of lack. That's bringing lack consciousness with you in each moment. Whereas love consciousness is where we look at the resources that are around us and begin to create with what is present. I'll talk about the structure of these classes that we're going to do. We've done iPractice mindfulness classes before, and this one is going to be iPractice love over lack. And the structure of this class, much like the last mindfulness series, is going to be the first 3 classes are free, so please come, invite as many people as you can. Come check it out. There's going to be about a 30-minute presentation on the topic of love versus lack, and it's going to have a little bit different focus each time to hit different points of our experience in life. And then the last portion, about 20 minutes or so, will be a silent meditation to internalize our takeaway, what our mind perceived out of our experience during the talk for our own personal interpretation, our own personal journey. And then the last 10 minutes or so is kind of an open forum for people to share anything they experienced during the meditation, anything that came to them, or even any successes they've had with loving themselves. And then after those 3 weeks, then we're going to move into a much deeper format where those of us who want to continue will do the normal iPractice $20 a class format, and those are 5 weeks long. So that will be a total of 8 weeks that we'll be doing iPractice love over lack.